Hello everybody, welcome to the show. Ross Madden here with the Truther Think Tank. Today we are discussing what a truther is and what a limited hangout is. How can you tell the difference? Is Q a limited hangout? Is Alex Jones a limited hangout? How can you tell? And so we're going to discuss what that means. What is a limited hangout? But before we get into that, I have two shout-outs to make, two very important shout-outs to make. Have you ever been attacked by maybe you're not even there to defend yourself, or you're attacked by so many people that you just can't defend yourself, or you don't have the energy to defend yourself? I'm sure everybody has been, actually. At least been attacked behind their back. Anyone with opinions has been attacked. That's part of having opinions. Well, have you ever been defended by somebody when, you know, they didn't really know you and you didn't ask them to defend you, but they just do it because they think you're worth defending or your opinions are worth defending? Has that ever happened to you? That happened to me this week by two different people, two different truthers. I'm shaking the camera a little bit because I'm emotional on this. Nathan Stolman from Lift the Veil and Joe of the Carolinas both defended me and my reputation this week on YouTube after I was attacked for making a video calling out Q and Jordan, debunking them actually as Israeli propaganda. And I mean, if you follow Q, if you follow Jordan, it's fine. Just know that their stuff on Iran is gonna be biased. Like, that's the thing about a limited hangout. Certain subjects, certain topics are gonna be off the table. They won't wanna discuss them. So I just wanted to say thank you to Nathan and Joe for defending my reputation on YouTube. Very impressive presentations. I actually really love your guys' work. And that actually caused me to become a sponsor of Nathan's. I went to truthclothing.io, which I suggest all of my viewers go ahead and do, and become a sponsor of Nathan Stolman and Lift the Veil. I did it on my walk this morning in 3 minutes. I clicked through my cell phone with 1 bar, and I had a shirt being shipped to my house, a Truth Matters shirt, large, being shipped to my house within 3 days from California, and I cannot wait to get it. I cannot wait to wear it. I'm gonna make so many presentations wearing the Truth Matters t-shirt, and I was so impressed. He's on the first page of Google. A truther is gonna be someone who tells the truth about the mainstream media and their lies, and wants to dig into the important subjects that the mainstream media doesn't want to cover. The mainstream media, if they even bring up the important subjects, will try to obfuscate or propagandize their audience to believe a certain way about those subjects. And they're gonna lie pretty much every time they think they can get away with it. And the people who just get their news from the mainstream media are really woefully uninformed about the important subjects, and that's going to be the corruption within the FBI, that's going to be the Middle East, how we largely function as a guard dog for Israel in the Middle East, and other important subjects that the mainstream media you don't even hear it on the mainstream media largely, and if you do, it might be pro-Israel propaganda, or it might be it's almost always big government propaganda. That's how you know you're listening to propaganda, is because they're asking for more government regulations and more government involvement in our lives. And that's why it's interesting to have Trump. You don't know if he's a truther or not, because he doesn't always come out and tell the truth, but he is deregulating, -2 regulations for every 1 new one. And there's other things like that where he has said, we want to pull out of Syria. Then a week later, we're getting ourselves more involved in Syria, so it's really hard to judge. Because when someone is a limited hangout is somewhere in between the mainstream media and a truther. A limited hangout is going to be it's not a trap necessarily, but it's the place where it's a following where someone goes after they've broken out of the mainstream media delusion. They will go seeking the truth, and a lot of times they'll seek it on YouTube. So people have joined YouTube, and some of them are backed by potentially nefarious backers in order to obfuscate and collect these followers, but not let them get to the real truth that a truther is trying to tell you about. And you know, a truther is going to cover all of those those big stories, and that they won't necessarily be right about all of the big stories, because we're all limited. Our hangout is all limited by our knowledge. None of us know the whole truth. We're all seeking it out, and when you come to somebody, there's always going to be one thing you can pick. Oh, you said this, you said that, you made a mistake here. That doesn't mean someone's not that doesn't mean someone's not an unlimited hangout. You could be either a limited or unlimited. But you're unlimited if you're willing to have the best guests on, if you're willing to have the stories talked about, if you're willing to have the truth told, even if you don't necessarily even believe it. You could be wrong, and you can still be a truther. And so that is what a limited hangout is. It comes back to how big is the truth you are allowed to have on your show. Mainstream media, they'll tell some truth. They'll tell the truth about Kim's butt being fake, but they won't tell the truth about the Duma gas attack being fake. And a limited hangout is going to be somewhere in between. They might touch on the big story. They may say the Duma attack was staged, but they might not dive into the white helmets being tied to British intelligence or their financial ties, who are their financiers. So that's really how you can tell the difference between a limited hangout and an unlimited hangout. The unlimited hangouts are trying to make the biggest stories as big as possible with as much real world impact, and the limited hangouts are trying to squash certain stories. Is Alex Jones a limited hangout? A lot of us got our first red pill from Alex Jones. But I would consider Alex Jones a limited hangout because he doesn't really discuss Israel very often, although he did have Steve Pachinik on, and he did a great job with Owen Schroyer. Owen Schroyer's not really clear on what Israel and Iran are doing in the Middle East, but Pachinik did a great job explaining it to him and the audience, and the fact that InfoWars has the information available to their audience if they're willing to look for it, that kind of suggests that they're not a limited hangout. The fact that QAnon, Q or Jordan don't discuss Israel, don't discuss the fact that Iran is actually following the nuclear deal. And that's a really important point, because what's the whole point of making a deal? Is getting what you want. You want something, they want something. You make a deal to get what you want, and we wanted them to comply to reduce their nuclear stockpile, their nuclear stockpile, and they did that. They've greatly reduced it. Their enrichment is capped out at 3.7% or something like that, and you need above 90% to make a weapon. So they're nowhere near weapons grade. They've greatly reduced the number of centrifuges that they have, so they have reduced their capability to produce it. And if you're not going to discuss that, then you would be a limited hangout in regards to Israel and Iran, but specifically Israel's wars in the Middle East, which the United States largely carried out. But let's be honest, geolocationally, whose backyard are we fighting in when we're talking about Syria? We're talking about Israel's backyard, and it's past Syria. It goes back to Iraq, Afghanistan. All of these people are in Israel's neighborhood. And why are we fighting these wars? It's because we are Israel's you know, guard dog, I guess. We're the bulldog, and they're the ones with the leash telling us where to go. It's pretty insulting, to be honest. And they own our media. We know they own our media, so they're convincing us to be the guard dog, and it's pathetic. On our point, I mean, we look really stupid to them, I'm sure. Because we're spending all of the money and taking all of the risks and getting a large amount of the hate, not all of the hate. I think a lot of the Muslims in the Middle East recognize that the United States citizens are largely not at fault for this. Although we are paying for it, although many of us are blindly sitting by, and that's disgusting. That can't be happening. We are not really in charge of how our military and taxes are spent, and we're forced to pay them. And that's another major litmus test. Are you willing to talk about whether taxation is force, taxation is theft, or not? And that's one thing. While Stefan Molyneux may not speak up about the Israeli involvement in the Middle East, can you blame him? He's got a wife and child, and doing that is dangerous. I don't. I'm myself. I can be as risky as I want with the things that I say, but he actually has people that matter to him, very close to him, and so if he is willing to talk about the fact that taxation is theft, the fact that our Federal Reserve is absolutely a criminal organization, and they're destroying our country's chance at a free and intelligent economy, something that actually resembles the free market, then we've got to audit and end the Fed. And he talks about that, so you know he's not an Israeli you know he's not defending Israel and the bankers. He's not paid off. Stefan Molyneux, Peter Schiff, they're not limited hangouts because they go right after the IRS and they question whether they have the legal legitimacy to do what they do. And you know, they say pay your taxes because what are you gonna do? Like, go to jail for 10 years or whatever? But eventually businesses are not going to put up with this. Eventually businesses are going to band together and say, you know, enough is enough. Like, I'm tired of paying for a Department of Justice that just undermines our president. Federal taxes, oh my goodness. They're such a big waste of money. I understand state and local, like pay for your schools, pay for your police departments. You know, there are things that uphold society. We don't need a federal government. I don't think we ever have. And it's like, it's more damage at this point than it has ever been worth. So large numbers of our federal agencies, especially the FBI and DOJ corruption, need to be unearthed and need to be disbanded. And that brings me to my second sponsor. I think Nathan Stolman from Lift the Veil does this about as well as anybody. He will generally say, I have one sponsor, and that is my truthclothing.io store, which I showed you earlier in this video. Well, I have one sponsor, and that is my exposethedeepstate.com/store.html, where I sell these bumper stickers, FB I'm with her bumper stickers, and it's got James Comey's face on it. You can see my fingers there for scale. It's 6 inches by 3.5 inches tall, and it is a beautiful message to get out into the real world about FBI corruption and how they're teamed up with the Clinton campaign, and we have known this for years. We need to expose this. We need to get it out in the real world, let people know that we care about this subject. And that's how things are going to change. We're going to show people we care about these things. FBI I'm with her matters. FBI corruption, how are we supposed to run a fair and honest government when the DOJ and the FBI are investigating all of the good people and letting all of the Nexium pedophiles, you know, criminals within Washington, D.C. just go? So if you want to help me expose the FBI and the DOJ, go check out my store. That's www.exposethedeepstate.com/store.html, and pick up a bumper sticker. They're very reasonably priced. If you get 10, they're $1.70 each, which that's very reasonable. $1.70, 17 bucks for 10. This video is starting to get long, so I just want to finish up talking about the specific news stories that I think are the litmus test questions, that I think are the big news stories that determine whether someone is a truther or a limited hangout. And you know, those are going to be the Pizzagate stories. Like, are you still coming back to the Pizzagate? Are you covering NXIVM? Are you covering the Wiener trial and the connections between NXIVM, the Brothmans? Another thing I want to do now is shout out to all of the truthers who are legitimate truthers. And so Blackstone Intelligence, Jake Morphonius, covered the connection between the Brothmans and NXIVM, and that's a clear sign he's not any kind of shill. He's not protected. That's a risky thing for him to say. He didn't have to say that, but he did because he's brave and he's a good reporter. Thank you, Jake. I appreciate your reporting. I've been following you for a good while now, and you're just one of my favorite people to follow. So every one of my followers, if you're not following Jake Morphonius from Blackstone Intelligence, you're missing out. Turn this channel off and go follow him. Alright, and so another thing, that the reason why he has been so great, aside from the Pizzagate, is that he has also been covering the Duma attacks and the Israeli crimes in the Middle East about better than anyone. He's got great contacts from Iran, Syria, Afghanistan, I mean all across the Middle East and internationally, so he's a great resource for those Middle East wars. And Q, is Q a limited hangout? Of course Q's a limited hangout. Q won't talk about Israel. Q will never criticize Israel's crimes in the Middle East and crimes in Syria. Q's not going to talk about all of the children who have had their organs harvested out of Syria in the refugee camps surrounding the nation. Q's basically Israeli propaganda, and every time that Syria is going to have problems or Iran is going to have problems, it's gonna be supported by Q. And even, I would say, supported by President Trump in a lot of cases. Israel is supported by President Trump, and in that way, both him and Q are limited hangouts. And like, we should always remember that Trump got elected by the Israeli media. Trump has gotten positive publicity in front of the mainstream media for not just years, not decades. Decades he has been on NBC getting positive press, and I think that that had a large amount to do with him becoming president. I just want to say great work to Jake. I think your reports are awesome. Your reporting on the Middle East has been fantastic, and your reporting on NXIVM's been outstanding. I think that if that continues, you're going to end up being one of the greatest truthers to have ever lived. And I fully want to support your work in any way that we can, in any way that I can. Please let me know how we can support the work of Blackstone Intelligence. Another way to find out if someone is a limited hangout or a truther is if they are willing to cover the American healthcare system and the American healthcare costs and how they've been skyrocketing, not just since Obamacare, but since the 1960s and 50s. So in 1960, you would have to pay about 15 days worth of wages in order to cover a year's worth of costs. In 2012, before Obamacare got passed, or maybe right in the wake of Obamacare, that same cost was about 23% of your household income. And since then, it's increased about another 25 to 30%. So we're talking about 30% of household income goes to health care costs. That was going to be your saving money. That was going to be your, I'm going to save this money and buy a house and start a family money. So that's being put on delay while people go and just cover their basic costs of rent, healthcare and food, which takes up so much of the income of, you know, the lower class people, that there's no escaping the lower class. How are you supposed to escape when they keep breaking all the rungs of the ladder that's supposed to climb you out of the lower class? It's very difficult, and a lot of people just aren't even trying. They're looking at how difficult it is, and they're like thinking about how smart they are, and they're like, this is just too much of an uphill battle for me to really find it worth it to try and reach the middle class. And so people are hopping on the government dole and applying for Obamacare, and that just makes it more and more expensive because Obamacare is overcharging like crazy. And there is a story I can tell about that, but I want to save it for another report. They're overcharging like crazy. Tens of thousands of dollars for a weekend in the hospital. $25,000, $30,000 for a weekend in the hospital. That's staying at the nicest Ritz-Carlton on the moon. Like, you do not spend $30,000 a night or $15,000 a night in any hotel, but you do in a shitty hospital in Virginia. So there's just absolutely ridiculous healthcare costs going on right now, and it's got to be reported on. It's completely underreported on, and you know truthers are going to be the only ones reporting on it, because the pharmaceutical industry has paid off the mainstream media, and they've probably largely paid off the alternative media. Although Alex Jones, and we should talk about just Alex Jones. Is Alex Jones a limited hangout? It's so hard to tell, because he's attacking the pharmaceutical industry non-stop. He sells all of his own supplements. In a way, he's kind of replacing the pharmaceutical industry by doing that. And I think years from now, we're going to look at those we're going to look at those nutraceuticals that he sells, the supplements, and we're going to say, wow, actually a lot of the nutrients inside of those capsules actually that's valuable health, and he's sourcing them from whole food sources. Like, he might actually be getting really good products that in years from now, our science progresses and we realize, oh shit, we are all nascent iodine deficient, and we should all be taking, you know, super male vitality or whatever the testosterone booster he's got, because we're all testosterone deficient. I think that science is going to come to light, and a lot of it's going to be valid. So Alex Jones, while some may say his reports are kind of crazy and they don't say a lot of facts, they don't name a lot of names, he's still attacking the deep state about as hard as anybody in the world. And he still has people on this show that name the names. I was thinking Roger Stone, like, I run a deep state website, exposethedeepstate.com, which you guys can all visit to learn about the deep state and the deep state actors and their organizations and how they're trying to tear us down and their crimes. But I run that website in order to expose the deep state, and I go to stonecoldtruth.com, Roger Stone's website, all the time, because he's naming the names. He knows the insiders, and he knows their crimes, and he has that history that goes back decades and decades, so that he really knows the inner workings of Washington better than most truthers do. And so he's a valuable resource to the truther community, even if he's got some nefarious ties going back decades, even if he's got lobbyist ties, even if he's got Russian ties and deep state ties. He knows the deep state because of those ties. And so Roger Stone, InfoWars, Alex Jones, while they do produce these emotionally driven, you know, sometimes non-factual presentations where they won't name the names and they won't dig into the crimes, they'll just get their audience charged up and angry, they're at least still sometimes having the facts on and having those names on. So it makes it very difficult to decide whether he is a limited hangout or an unlimited hangout. But right now, I'm going to say him and Trump are not limited hangouts. They are actually trying to move the ball forward and attack the deep state and put people away and get the right people arrested and get the right people in power. And that's really what that's what we're trying to do here. That's what we're trying to do at exposethedeepstate.com and the Truther think tank. We're trying to expose the crimes, get good people into office, because we know how important it is when good people are in office, how much good they can do, and we know how much evil the wrong people running our government can do. When the wrong people are running the executive branch, when the wrong people are running the Department of Justice, when the wrong people are running the courts, when the wrong people are running our House and Senate, we give up our control and we end up losing as a nation. And that's what Trump is trying to stop. He's trying to make us win as a country, and hopefully win as individuals, and hopefully become richer as people and families, and start families and buy our own houses and afford health care again. And with that, I just want to thank all of my viewers for tuning in, spending your time with me, giving me your eyeballs and attention. I know this was a longer video. I rambled a little bit. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your time. That's why I generally clip my videos instead of going live. It's because I want to not waste my viewers' time. So, thank you so much for tuning in. I love you guys. Have a great, great day.